The golden lighting of the Grand Rain Equestrian Auction spilled across the sanded arena floor, catching every swirl of dust kicked up by the jet-black stallion circling inside. Tempest Gale was a force of controlled chaos. His coat, a deep, mirror-like obsidian, shimmered under the chandeliers like a storm cloud trapped in flesh. His build was flawless: long legs, high-set neck, and powerful shoulders that screamed Frisian lineage, though some whispered he had Oldenburg blood in his veins too. What no one questioned was his fury. Tempest Gale wasn't just wild. He was feral, elegant, and on the edge of explosive. One by one, seasoned riders had stepped forward. Some were thrown before their boots hit the stirrups. Others never made it close. He wouldn't tolerate commands. He refused human presence. The beast had earned a reputation, and now no one dared approach, not for any price. Until Willa Deveraux appeared, stepping into the spotlight with a calm defiance in her eyes. Willa's presence was electric. She wasn't dressed like a wrangler or a southern cowgirl. No, her navy coat was crisp, her white breeches unwrinkled, her black boots flawless. She looked like she belonged in a European dressage competition, not inside an arena lined with Texas oil money and old cattle kings. Yet, when her boots touched the dirt, the energy in the room shifted. She wasn't there for show. She was there for him. Tempest Gale snorted, ears pinned back, hooves slicing the ground as he turned toward her. The crowd tensed. In the VIP balcony, Beauregard Vexley, the billionaire stallion baron, tightened his grip on his drink. This was entertainment to most, but to him, it was personal. The stallion had cost him millions in training and embarrassment. And now this girl, this Deveraux nobody, was walking into his ring? Willa moved slowly, her breath syncing with Tempest Gale's restless rhythm. Her hand raised, palm steady. No whip, no halter, just intuition and something more. Something that pulsed deeper. Her voice was calm, barely audible. "You know me, don't you?" she whispered. The stallion didn't rear this time. His hooves froze. His eyes locked onto hers. And in that brief silence, the entire auction floor held its breath. Because in front of the richest breeders and coldest investors in the country, the impossible happened. Tempest Gale lowered his head, not in surrender, but in recognition. The ghost of Cormac Hawthorne was alive in that moment. And Willa had just awakened it. The silence after Tempest Gale's surrender felt heavier than the chaos before it. Willa stood motionless, one hand resting gently on his sleek, black muzzle, her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and instinct. Around them, the grand auction hall remained frozen. No clapping, no gasps, just wide eyes and tight jaws. Even the announcer had gone quiet, as if afraid any noise might break the fragile, impossible connection between them. From his shadowed seat near the edge of the stands, Finian Finn Marsh leaned forward, hat pushed back, eyes narrowed. "That ain't training," he muttered under his breath. "That's blood." He hadn't seen Willa in over 10 years, not since the fire that gutted Cormac Hawthorne's ranch and scattered everything he built. But now, watching her face the stallion bred by the man who raised her, Finn knew something no one else in that room could. This wasn't the first time Willa and Tempest Gale had met. Beauregard Vexley rose slowly from his private box, his expression unreadable. The crowd's attention shifted to him for a moment, sensing the authority he carried. He was the one who had bought Tempest Gale at an absurd price, expecting a show horse to dominate the circuit. What he got was a walking storm. And now Willa, this stranger with a name he thought buried, was touching that million-dollar stallion like she'd raised him herself. Something about it didn't sit right. Willa finally broke the stillness. She lowered the lead rope gently, turning to face the panel of judges and the silent crowd. "I'll take the ride," she said, her voice clear and strong. The words struck the air like thunder. A ripple of murmurs spread instantly. She hadn't just calmed Tempest Gale. She was about to mount him. Whispers filled the marble corridors behind the bleachers. Who was she, really? How did she do that? In the far back, Astrid Monroe, live streaming to thousands, leaned into her mic. Ladies and gentlemen, we're witnessing something unprecedented here at the Grand Rain auction. This isn't just a rider, this is a reckoning. Tempest Gale shifted beneath her, not in protest, but like he was waiting. Willa placed her foot in the stirrup, her heart pounding, not from fear, but from memory. Her father's voice echoed faintly in her mind. There's only one way to earn his trust, become part of his storm. And as she swung her leg over the saddle, she realized something terrifying. This ride wasn't about money anymore. It was about the truth. The second Willa settled into the saddle, a collective breath escaped the room. No applause. No encouragement. Just tension so thick it clung to every velvet seat and gold-trimmed invitation in the arena. The timer hadn't even started yet. Across the arena, a young official stood frozen, clutching the stopwatch like it was a detonator. 60 seconds. That was all she needed. But one wrong move, and the stallion beneath her could break her in half. Tempest Gale shifted his weight, ears twitching, eyes scanning the space as if waiting for a threat. His body was a coiled spring of potential chaos, but his mind was focused on her. Willa didn't grip the reins tight. She let them rest, light as breath, and leaned in slightly, whispering something no one could hear. From the balcony, Astrid Monroe zoomed in on the frame. "She's talking to him," she breathed into the mic. "God help us, she's not controlling him, she's communicating." And then it began. The announcer's voice cracked through the silence. "Time starts now." Tempest exploded into motion. But it wasn't panic, it was precision. His hooves struck the dirt with elegance, not rage. Willa adjusted her seat with fluid grace, moving with him instead of against. Around them, dust spun like smoke in a war zone. Her heart pounded against her ribs, but her face showed only focus. Each stride was a challenge. Every second, a test. She knew one misstep could shatter the fragile balance between dominance and destruction. In the crowd, Beauregard Vexley clenched his jaw. His bet had always been that no one could ride Tempest Gale. If Willa succeeded, it wasn't just a loss of money. It was a blow to his pride. Worse, her name would be spoken in the same breath as Cormac Hawthorne's again. That name he had worked so hard to erase. His fingers curled around the edge of the railing. She wasn't supposed to come back. She wasn't supposed to win. 10 seconds left. Tempest slowed, muscles gleaming with sweat, eyes alert but calm. Willa inhaled deeply, her fingers brushing the horse's mane. She wasn't thinking of the $1 million. She was thinking of a day long ago when she was still a child and this horse, just a colt, had run beside her in the morning fog. A memory lost in fire, now burning back into her skin. The final bell rang. Willa exhaled, and Tempest Gale stopped, on command. No fight. No fury. Just stillness. The impossible had happened. And in the silence that followed, a voice from the stands called out, "She rides like him." The arena erupted, not with cheers, but with stunned disbelief. The kind of silence that hurts more than applause, because it means people are trying to understand what they just saw. Willa slid off Tempest Gale like it was second nature, her boots landing softly on the arena floor. She gave the stallion a final touch, whispered something only he would hear, then turned her back to the crowd. But as she walked away, all eyes followed, like ghosts rising from long-buried graves. In the upper gallery, Beauregard Vexley didn't clap. His jaw was tight, his eyes burning. He whispered something to a man beside him, who quickly left the box with urgency in his steps. This was no longer a show. It was a threat. Willa's return wasn't an accident, it was a reckoning. And her success with the horse wasn't luck. It was blood-deep knowledge Vexley hoped had died with Cormac. Outside the arena, reporters swarmed. Astrid Munro stood in the eye of the storm, holding her mic like a blade. "You just made history in there," she told Willa, the cameras blinking red around them. "Who taught you to ride like that?" Willa didn't answer. Not fully. Just a soft smile and 3 words, "My father did." The name wasn't spoken, but everyone heard it, felt it. Later, in the dim quiet of the stables, Willa returned to Tempest Gale's stall. The stallion stood calmly now, watching her like an old friend. She ran her hand along his flank, eyes tracing the curve of a scar she hadn't noticed before. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. And then, without warning, a memory surged, her father, angry, shouting in the barn. Someone else there. A man in a white shirt with a ring on his finger. A horse screaming. Her young self crying. Finian Marsh stepped into the light behind her. "He remembers more than we do," he said, nodding toward the stallion. His voice was low, rough with age and buried guilt. "That's not just any scar, Willa. That's where it all started going wrong." She turned to him, breath catching in her throat. "You knew," she said. "You knew what happened the night my father disappeared." Finn looked at her for a long moment. "I knew what Vexley wanted," he said. "And what your father refused to give him." Willa felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The ride, the $1 million, the challenge, it had all been bait. A way to pull her back in. And now that she was here, they wouldn't let her leave so easily. The quiet of the stables didn't last. By morning, word of Willa's ride had spread far beyond the grounds of the Grand Rain auction. Social media was flooded with clips. Headlines whispered the return of Cormac Hawthorne's daughter. For some, it was a triumph. For others, a problem. Beauregard Vexley stood by the paddock, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in clipped, cold phrases. "She's not leaving with the stallion. I don't care what she earned. Hawthorne's legacy dies tonight." Inside the guest lounge, Willa stood at a wide window, watching Tempest Gale graze alone in a distant enclosure. Her fingers trembled slightly as she clutched a steaming mug of coffee, but her eyes were steady. She knew coming back would stir up dust. What she hadn't expected was the weight of memory, the way the scent of hay and leather brought back her father's voice, her mother's silence, and the night the barn burned. Finian Marsh entered quietly, carrying a worn leather folder. "Your father kept this hidden. Gave it to me for safekeeping just before he vanished." Willa turned slowly. The folder bore the Hawthorne crest, faded but still recognizable, a rearing stallion over crossed reins. Inside were breeding certificates, bloodline records, and a letter written in Cormac's sharp, urgent hand. One sentence stood out, underlined twice. "If anything happens to me, follow the horse. He carries more than my name." Her hands shook as she read it. Tempest Gale wasn't just a prize horse. He was evidence of what she didn't yet know. But Cormac had bred him with intention, and perhaps with fear. She looked at Finn. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" The old man's jaw tightened. "Because people who ask too many questions around here end up missing, or buried under silence." That evening, a knock came at her suite door. Astrid Munro stood there, not with a camera, but with a worn photo in hand. "I thought you should see this," she said. The picture was old, taken years ago. It showed a younger Beauregard Vexley shaking hands with Cormac Hawthorne beside a newborn black colt. In the background stood a man with a burn scar on his hand, the same hand Willa remembered in her fragmented nightmare. Her voice dropped. "That man, he's still around, isn't he?" Astrid nodded, lowering her voice. "They call him the Handler. And if he knows you're asking questions, you won't be riding out of here." Night settled heavily over the grounds of the Grand Rain auction. The distant scent of smoke mingled with the fresh-cut grass, carried by the breeze that whispered through the stalls. Willa moved silently between the rows, guided only by the faint light of her phone. Ever since she received Astrid's photo, she'd felt it, that tightening in her chest. She wasn't just being watched. She was being hunted. The handler wasn't a ghost from the past anymore. He was here. And he wasn't alone. At stall 14, something felt wrong. The padlock was broken. The door hung half open. Inside, Tempest Gale stood restless, his head held high, his dark coat shimmering with unease. Willa entered slowly, whispering to calm him. In the corner of the stall, something caught her eye, a small wooden box, half buried in the straw. She opened it with care. Inside, a rusted horseshoe, and a note. "You should have stayed gone." Her blood ran cold. She scanned the shadows outside the stall, but the night remained silent, thick and suffocating. Clutching the note, she sprinted toward Finn's trailer, every instinct telling her to run faster. He met her at the door, rifle in hand, eyes sharp. "They're watching you now," he said. "Vexley never planned on letting you leave with that horse. Your father made sure Tempest couldn't be owned. That's why Vexley wanted him silenced." Willa dropped the note onto the table between them. "What is he hiding?" she asked. Finn pulled out a worn map, old, creased, and marked with faded ink. "Before he disappeared, your father gave me this. Told me if anything happened, someone would come looking." He pointed to an area south of the old training ring on the Hawthorne property. "Your father hid something under the ground there. Documents, bloodline records." "Proof. Proof of what?" Willa asked, her voice cracking. "That Tempest Gale wasn't sold to Vexley," Finn said. "He was stolen." The truth hit her like a hoof to the chest. Vexley hadn't just erased her father's legacy. He had built an empire on theft. If the truth got out, his entire fortune could crumble. Willa stared down at the map. "If I go there, he'll know. He'll send the handler." Finn looked her dead in the eye. "He already has. The question now is, are you ready to finish what your father started?" The night was thick with fog as Willa stepped over the broken fence of what remained of the old Hawthorne training grounds. The grass had grown wild, overtaking what once was a place of order, discipline, and dreams. She followed the path on Finn's map, her boots sinking into the damp soil. It was quiet, too quiet. Even the wind felt like it was holding its breath. Beneath her, the ground pulsed with memory. This was where her father had trained champions. And this was where he had hidden the truth. She found the spot, a cracked slab of concrete near the old round pen. The burn marks were still visible from the fire all those years ago. Kneeling, Willa brushed away debris until her fingers hit metal. A ring. She pulled it, and a heavy stone shifted, revealing a small cavity beneath the foundation. Inside sat a steel lockbox, worn but intact. Her heart pounded as she reached for it. That's when she heard it. A twig snapped. Slow, deliberate steps moved through the brush behind her. Willa froze, then slowly turned her head. A figure emerged from the darkness, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black. His face was half covered, but she didn't need to see it. She felt who it was. The handler. The man from her nightmares. The man from her father's last argument. The one with burned hands and no conscience. She grabbed the box and bolted. Branches tore at her arms as she ran through the overgrowth, adrenaline surging. She could hear him behind her, silent now, calculated, fast. But she knew these woods. She leapt over a ditch, cut between two collapsed sheds, and sprinted toward the trailer where her truck was hidden. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The pounding of his footsteps was all the confirmation she needed. He was gaining. She slid behind the wheel and turned the key. The engine roared to life just as a shadow swept across the side mirror. The headlights cut through the fog, and for the briefest moment illuminated his face. Scarred, cold, expressionless. Then he disappeared into the dark. Willa didn't stop until she reached Finn's place. She burst through the door, the box clutched tight in her arms. "I found it," she gasped. "And he found me." Finn didn't ask who. He just locked the door behind her and nodded toward the fireplace. "Whatever's in that box," he said quietly, "better be worth what's coming." The lockbox was heavier than it looked. Willa placed it gently on Finn's worn table, her fingers trembling as she turned the latch. The metal creaked, resisting, like it didn't want to let go of what had been hidden for so long. Finn sat across from her, silent, a shotgun resting on his lap. Outside, the wind pushed against the trailer, whispering like it carried the voices of the past. Inside the box, wrapped in a layer of aged oilcloth, were 3 items: a leather-bound notebook, a flash drive sealed in a plastic sleeve, and an envelope with her name on it. Willa unfolded the note first. It was her father's handwriting. Sharp, fast, written in a way that made her feel like he was in the room, rushing to get his last words on paper. "If you're reading this, Willa, it means I failed to stop them. But you still can." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Not yet. The notebook was filled with breeding records, annotated documents, and a detailed timeline of everything that had happened in the final months before Cormac vanished. He had discovered a falsified lineage being circulated in elite auctions, Vexley's doing. Tempest Gale was meant to be the cornerstone of an empire built on forged bloodlines. But when Cormac refused to be part of it, Vexley moved against him. Finn flipped through the pages, jaw clenched. This is enough to destroy him," he muttered. "The entire auction system is built on purity. If they find out Vexley's been selling lies, he's done." Willa opened the flash drive on her laptop. Inside were audio recordings. Conversations between Cormac and Vexley. Threats. Please. And one final clip, recorded just days before the fire. Her father's voice was ragged, urgent. "If anything happens to me, the stallion carries the truth. He's the only one who can prove what they've done." She sat back, her mind spinning. The brand on Tempest Gale's flank, it wasn't just a breeder's mark. It matched a pattern noted in the notebook, a secret identification system Cormac had developed. Every stallion in Vexley's operation was supposed to follow the same forged line, but Tempest was the only one marked with truth. Outside, headlights swept across the window. Willa's breath caught. "They're here," Finn said, already moving to kill the lights. She closed the box and grabbed her father's letter. "Then it's time," she whispered, her voice steady. "Tomorrow, we ride. And the world finds out what they've done." The morning air was thick with tension as the sun rose over the Grand Rain grounds. Willa stood outside the trailer, her father's notebook secured inside her jacket, the flash drive tucked beneath her shirt. The weight of it wasn't just physical, it was ancestral, emotional. Today wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. About restoring a name that had been buried under silence and greed. Tempest Gale stood beside her, alert, as if he too understood that this was not a competition, but a reckoning. She had contacted Astrid Monroe at dawn. "I need a camera. Live. No edits." Astrid didn't ask questions. She simply said, "Meet me in the arena at 10. As Willa saddled Tempest, Finn watched from the barn door, his arms crossed and expression grave. "Once you say it out loud," he warned, "there's no walking it back." Willa met his eyes. "I don't want to walk it back. I want them to hear me." At exactly 10 o'clock, Willa rode Tempest Gale into the arena, this time not as a contestant, but as a messenger. The grandstands were half full, with wealthy breeders and corporate investors sipping champagne and reviewing their bidding cards. Beauregard Vexley stood near the judge's booth, flanked by his security team, feigning calm. His smile faltered the moment he saw her. Astrid appeared on the central platform, microphone in hand, her live stream already broadcasting to thousands. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "today's auction pauses for a moment of truth." She turned the camera to Willa. "Willa Deveraux, daughter of Cormac Hawthorne, has something to say." The name alone caused a stir. Conversations halted. Eyes turned. Willa's voice echoed through the sound system, strong despite the pressure clawing at her chest. "My father didn't disappear. He was forced into silence. Because he knew the truth about the horses you've been buying. Tempest Gale isn't just a stallion, he's evidence. The bloodline you paid millions for? It's forged." Gasps rippled across the stands. Some laughed. Others looked to Vexley, whose jaw had locked into stone. She reached into her jacket and held up the notebook. "My father kept records. He branded Tempest with a unique code, proof that his lineage was unaltered. Vexley tried to destroy him, tried to burn the truth away. But the stallion survived. And so did I." Vexley stepped forward, red with rage. "This is slander." "No," Willa said, leveling her gaze. "This is the end of your empire." And as Astrid angled the camera toward his face, the world finally saw him, not as a mogul, but as a man cornered by truth. Security tried to silence her. They moved in fast, but the crowd was faster. Voices rose, demanding answers. Several breeders stood up in protest, some recognizing the names and dates Willa had shouted. Astrid's livestream surged past 500,000 viewers. The truth was out, and no amount of money or intimidation could stop it now. Vexley's men hesitated as cameras flashed. His empire, once untouchable, began to crumble in real time. Beauregard Vexley didn't scream. He didn't run. He just stood there, silent, exposed. And in that silence, Willa saw what her father must have faced all those years ago, power dressed in calm cruelty. But now, Vexley was alone. The world that once protected him had turned. He stepped back slowly, knowing the cameras were still rolling. "You don't know what you've started," he said to her. "I'm finishing what you started," she replied. By that afternoon, the authorities had arrived. The notebook, the flash drive, and Cormac's breeding records were placed into official hands. The branding system Cormac created matched exactly with the discrepancies in Vexley's horses. Investigations were launched. Several auctions were suspended. And by nightfall, Beauregard Vexley had disappeared from the estate entirely. Vanished, just as Cormac once had, only this time, the world was watching. In the quiet that followed, Willa stood in the stall with Tempest Gale, brushing his coat as the wind rustled the flags outside. Finn sat nearby, watching her with a kind of quiet pride. "He knew you'd come back," he said softly. "That's why he hid everything in the one place you'd always return to." Willa smiled, though her eyes brimmed with tears. "He raised more than horses. He raised me to fight for something bigger than fear." She reached into her jacket and took out the letter. She read it again, her father's words now an echo of her own strength. The past couldn't be undone, but it could be faced. And honored. The next morning, she loaded Tempest Gale into the trailer. The media waited at the gates, but this time, she didn't flinch. She drove down the long dirt road away from Grand Rain with the sun rising behind her, golden and full of promise. Her family name had been restored. The truth had survived. And Tempest Gale, the horse no one could tame, now walked proudly beside the only person who ever understood him. Not with reins, not with force, but with trust. What was broken had been mended. What was lost had come home. If this story moved you, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Every week, a new true story full of drama, twists, and courage. And tell me in the comments, would you have faced the past like Willa did?